Is it okay for Christians to live together before they get married? That's a question a lot of people are asking, and today we're going to talk about it. Not just from a cultural or emotional standpoint, but we're going to see what the Bible has to say about it. Cohabitation, or living together before you get married, is a norm in today's world. You probably have friends that are doing it. Maybe some of you watching this are doing it. In fact, maybe some of you are Christians or even new Christians, and you've stumbled onto this episode because, well, you're doing it because everyone else is doing it, and you're open to the idea that maybe God's word says something different. We're going to talk about that today. I know what you're thinking. Well, look, we moved in to save money, we moved in to grow closer, or even we moved in to test compatibility. I've heard all the excuses before, trust me. But here's a real question. What does God say about it? Because at the end of the day, it's not just about shared rent or Netflix logins. It's about honoring God with your body, with your relationships, and with your future marriage. So let's take a look at God's design for sex and marriage. See, the Bible paints a clear picture. Sex was designed to be enjoyed in the context of a lifelong covenant marriage between one man and one woman. I'm going to say that again in case you missed it the first time. Sex was designed to be enjoyed in the context of a lifelong covenant marriage between one man and one woman. Hebrews 13:4 says it like this: "Give honor to marriage and remain faithful to one another in marriage. God will surely judge people who are immoral and those who commit adultery." So when couples live together before marriage, they're not just bending the rules, they're bypassing the whole framework that God gave for intimacy and commitment. Now, to really understand what the New Testament says about this, we have to understand the Greek word porneia. This is a word that's used throughout the New Testament, and it's translated sexual immorality. So most of the verses that you read in the New Testament, when it talks about sexual immorality, it's talking about porneia. Now, this is a broad term that includes several things. It includes incest, homosexuality, prostitution, adultery, and, wait for it, premarital sex. So whenever you see the word sexual immorality in these verses I'm about to share with you, think about living together and sleeping together before you're married. And if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're a Christian, that should matter to you. Like, you should definitely want to know what God's word says about the things that you're doing. So look at Matthew 15:19. Jesus said, "For from the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, all sexual immorality, theft, lying, and slander." Or Paul, what he said in 1 Corinthians 6:18, "Run from sexual sin. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does, for sexual immorality, porneia, is a sin against your own body." Now, these are just a couple of examples, but yes, what they're proving is that porneia, which includes premarital sex, is clearly forbidden in the Bible, even in a culture like ancient Rome that celebrated sexual freedom. So if you think that our culture today celebrates all that sexual immorality I just listed out, Rome did even more than we do today. And so early Christians way back then were called to live differently, and so are we. Now, some people are going to say, well, the Bible doesn't specifically say don't live together before marriage. True. But it also doesn't mention TikTok or iPhones or online dating. But it does speak clearly about sexual holiness, and living together before marriage almost always places couples in compromising situations. I remember a couple who shared with me as I was doing premarital counseling with them. They were living together and they said that they were Christians. And so when I finally called them out on it and I said, guys, this isn't honoring God in your life, and they felt really bad about it. And the more we talked about it, they talked me in to letting them continue to live together as long as they wouldn't sleep together. And I, with great hesitation, was like, well, okay, but you got to promise. Well, guess what happened? 1 month went by, they seemed to be doing okay. 2 months went by, and now they're getting a little bit of quiet about the whole topic. Finally, at the 3-month mark, I asked them, how you guys doing? Are you still being pure? Are you still able to not sleep together, even though you live together? The guy had moved out to another room across the hall. Well, sheepishly, they said, no, we kind of screwed up and now we're having sex once again. I said, this is what I was warning you about. And look, at this point, they weren't repentant anymore. Now they were mad at me. But I had to remind them, it wasn't my rule. I wasn't the one telling them this. It's God's word that's telling them this. Friends, this is not about what your parents say or what your pastor says. It's about what God's word has to say. And you're going to have to answer to God someday for this. 1 Thessalonians 4:3 says it like this: God's will is for you to be holy, so stay away from all sexual sin. So friends, if you're watching this because you're living together, but you're not sleeping together yet, I just want to encourage you, run from this. This is one of these sins that doesn't say we're supposed to fight. We're supposed to run from it. Don't tempt yourself with living together. If you really want to honor God, you really should. Avoid playing with the fire that comes with living together before you're married. Because at the end of the day, this is a trust issue. Think about it. If you're okay with sleeping with someone who isn't your spouse before marriage, then what's stopping you from doing it after marriage? Now follow me, track with me on my logic here. I say this to couples all the time. When you sleep with your girlfriend or fiance before you're married, even if you know you're going to get married, even if you're already committed to each other and you're almost there, when you sleep with that person before you get married, what is that person going to think 5 years or 10 years down the road when they're having a hard time trusting you with some other person who's not your spouse? You follow what I'm saying here? This is your last opportunity. I'm talking to men and women here. This is your last opportunity. Even if you've already blown it in this area, this is your last opportunity to prove to your spouse that you can do this, that you can be faithful, that you can honor God when God says that sleeping with someone before you're married to them is sexual immorality. So trust me, this is going to come in really handy 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. You're going to be able to prove you're earning trust with your spouse, and your spouse is doing the same thing with you. That's why I think it's really important for every single one of you, even if you've been struggling with this and if you've failed in this time and time again. Look, there's forgiveness for that. God will release you from that. You don't have to live in the shame and the guilt of that. If you've done that already, I challenge you to make a commitment today. We're not going to do it anymore. I think this is going to help you to eventually earn trust that you're going to rely on someday in the future in your marriage. Here's what I want you to remember at the end of the day. Love is a choice, not just a feeling. And that choice doesn't start on your wedding day. It starts today. When you choose to honor God as a couple before marriage, you lay a solid foundation of trust, faithfulness, and spiritual unity that will carry into your future. So choose well, choose purity, choose faithfulness. This is God's will for your life.